Hello and welcome to this edition of Vintage Video, Military Honors. In August 1990, President George H.W. Bush launched Operation Desert Shield to help defend Saudi Arabia after Iraq invaded Kuwait. The impact of a battle across the world was felt at home as National Guard and Reserve units were called to serve. One of those units deployed was the 32nd Medical Detachment of the Wisconsin National Guard. There is pomp and circumstance when troops head to war, but in addition to the flags and trumpets are questions and worries of moms and dads who are leaving and for those left behind. I was on hand with a notepad and camera when the unit assembled in Beloit.
And all area residents proudly support the 12th Medical Detachment in its mission and offers well wishes and Godspeed.
We've been preparing and stuff, but you never really think it's going to happen until it gets there. You know, and then it just kind of hits like, wow, this is really happening.
Jennifer says she doesn't want to go, but will, taking her fears with her, leaving her family with theirs.
Loneliness, fear, something breaking out, something really happening to her. And how do you explain the concept of war to a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old? It's almost impossible.
Unable to explain anything, those on hand assured the departing reservists that Beloit will stand with them.
We are behind you all the way. We will always be there for you, not like in the past.
Really appreciate all support, all the backing, and we expect to see you all when we get back.
A reunion that can't come fast enough for the troops or the families.
Goes over there, I won't be there to watch over you and protect you. And he was feeling bad about that, because he's been around and he's my support and I've been his, and we won't be together.
Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Beloit. Prior to Desert Shield, a different unit of the National Guard led to my only foreign assignment. A story on a unit of the South Dakota National Guard as they went to Panama and Honduras for summer training. Because this is what I sent from my office in the Peer Bureau to the main newsroom in Sioux Falls, you see an unfinished version. Another reporter interviewed a Sioux Falls lawmaker for comments about the Guard's deployment. I listened to the interview and selected the quotes to use in this story. We flew a C-130 from Ellsworth Air Base near Rapid City to Panama City, a 13-hour flight on a propeller-driven plane. It was hot, humid, and very interesting. Palmarola Air Base is 1 hour's flight time from the Nicaraguan border. It's also the base of operations for 2 of South Dakota's guardsmen on summer training. Private Steve Collins, a journalism student at South Dakota State University, says being close to the war-torn country of Nicaragua doesn't bother him.
I've heard a lot, read a lot about the conflict in Nicaragua with the Contras and things like that. But up here, you wouldn't even know that there's a problem down there. We're so far from the action. There's no threat or anything up here. People are, there's obviously concern, but I haven't seen, the concern or even the threat up here. So I'm not concerned about it at all.
Sergeant Mitch Chapel of Spearfish says part of the training to be a public affairs officer is covering bridge construction by Guard units in northern Honduras he says look very similar to the Black Hills.
We were a part of the Southcom public affairs element in Panama City. They in turn sent us up here to Palmarola to be a part of the public affairs group or element that was at Camp Oso Grande. And so our job then, after we got to Oso Grande, was to interview people, to do some videotaping of the projects as they were being closed, to do some radio broadcasts.
Belle Fourche native Steve Collins says there are rules to follow when writing stories for the Guard, but he says he makes an effort to keep it news, not propaganda for the National Guard.
The military has a lot more specific guidelines than civilian journalists do. We have to be careful what we say. There's a lot of security factors, things like that. We're not as liberal in what we can say. We have to stick close to what the commander wants to hear, things like that. I went to DINFOS, Defense Information School, and they taught us up there how to report like the military wants you to, how to do things, so it doesn't sound as much propaganda. I think what we report down here is just basically, people doing their job. We do a lot of hometowners, things like that, just telling people what the Army does, what they're doing, and we try to stay away from the bias.
South Dakota Guardsmen with the Public Affairs Unit spent time during their training in Panama and other South American countries. The training in Honduras is a concern to South Dakota Representative Linda Stensland of Sioux Falls. She says she supports a ready and able Guard, but doesn't like the Guard practicing so close to Nicaragua. Okay, and then insert the Stensland by in cue. Ask if in the best interest. Out cue, what is our real purpose? It should be about 1:30 in on the Stensland interview. Okay, then next audio section. Take 1, 3, 2, 1. A Rapid City man, now on permanent guard duty in charge of the Public Affairs Detachment exercises, Major Roger King, says the U.S. presence shouldn't be a big concern.
I don't think it needs to be that big a concern because it is strictly a training exercise, and the people, the soldiers, are out there enjoying their work, and when it's all over with and they go home, they've got the training that they need in case the day ever does come.
The airbase is operated by the Hondurans and shared by the United States. Military regulations prohibited taking any pictures of the aircraft or the runway. Every 2 weeks, different Guard units rotate through the base of Palmarola. Some states have prevented their Guard units from going into Honduras because of the fighting in Nicaragua. Stensland says the maneuvers could be practiced someplace other than Honduras. Supermarket shelves are then the next Stensland package of wieners. This one, if you had 0 at the very front of the Stensland interview, should be somewhere around 4 minutes in. In cue, governors are becoming. Out cue, examine policy. All right, the next audio section. Take 1, 3, 2, 1. South Dakota's Adjutant General Phil Killey is in charge of the state's Guard. He says it's important the Guard units train where they're asked.
It gives us the overseas training that we need. You can't get that type of training that we get down in Central America, both for our public affairs detachment that was down there, as well as those engineering units and medical units that go down there and do training. We are so integral in the total force now, so much a part of our defense posture, that we need to get that overseas type training that's realistic, and it's an on-hands type training. And we can't have 50 governors or 50 separate national type policies set. We have to have a federal policy, and because our National Guard and our reserve component forces are so integral to our total force posture, we have to go where the federal military determines we need that training.
Military officials at the Palmarola base stress the humanitarian aid provided by the Guard and regular troops to the Honduran people, but the officials also say the primary job with the U.S. presence is to help stabilize Honduras's young democracy and act as a control on Nicaragua's plans for expansionism in Central America. At the Palmarola Air Base in Honduras, Dave Mossner reporting 430. Another unit of the South Dakota National Guard prepared to head overseas for training exercises. But before the 550 members could head to South Korea, several officers worked on learning the language.
피어에 살아요. 피어에 살아요.
There's one word that describes trying to learn Korean: tough.
Very tough. What you have to do is you just, like when you're in kindergarten again, you have to learn the alphabet, and then you have to start just learning basic words and phrases. And it was a challenge.
Guard training officer Dave Gunderson says last time he was in Korea, he couldn't even read the road signs. This time, when his unit from Pierre joins the Republic of Korea in training exercises, he'll be ready.
Because we're going to be working with a ROC battalion, we have to be able to communicate with that battalion. Now, most of the officers do speak English. As a matter of fact, they have to be able to read and write English before they get a commission in the Korean Army. So that's going to help a lot, but they don't get a lot of chance to speak English. So when they work with us, it's going to be a mutual effort. We're going to try and talk Korean to them, and they're going to try and talk English to us, and we're going to learn from each other.
To bring the Korean language class together, the Guard turned to Pierre's Capital University Center.
One of the missions of CUC is to try to meet the needs of the community, and we were contacted by the National Guard to see if we could help them bring a course in Korean to Pierre.
CUC's Marcia Cucker says organizing the class through South Dakota State University was easy because the Guard found the teacher.
The National Guard is paying partial tuition for all the students in the class. Dr. Jane Park is teaching the course along with Jay Mickelson, and they have taken and adapted an English book, or translated it into Korean.
재미가 어떠세요?
그저 그래요.
그저 그래요. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
재미가 어떠세요?
그저 그래요.
Pretend you want to introduce to him, and then.
The teacher for 17 members of the Guard is Dr. Jane Park, a medical doctor in Pierre who is a native Korean. She left her homeland in 1959.
It is very hard language, but after you learn certain format, it's easy for them. That's why I have been telling students to do the same thing.
Not only is the language itself difficult, Park says you speak differently to different people.
Especially speaking. Korean way we speaking, manner of speaking is different when you're talking to children and when you're talking to your friend, to higher rank people or respectable people. The verb changes a little bit, polite way and semi-polite way and a friendly way. So that is kind of hard for Western people because we are all same, manner to talk here, but in Korea it's kind of different.
눈을 만지세요. 입을 만지세요. 귀를 만지세요. 머리를 만지세요. 배를 만지세요.
I taught them Korean alphabet first because they like to read and writing, so that they could able to read. And another thing is we call the TPR, total physical response. And what you do is first lesson you teach them just a few words, like stand up and sit down and walk and turn around, etc. And then second lesson comes, you use the first word what they learn. Then add it up a little bit. Turn around the right side or turn to left, or you sit down and then, for instance, you teach them all the body parts, like nose and eyes and ears, and then touch your nose and ear and, touching your ear and walk and put your hand down. And it's kind of combination of things, but try to repeat so that they will, able to memorize.
당신의 책을 머리 위에 놓으세요. 머리 위에 놓으세요.
머리 위에 up here.
책상 위에 놓으세요. 책상 위에 놓으세요. You count 1 to 10.
1 to 10. Korean.
Korean, of course.
Korean. 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷, 다섯, 여섯, 일곱, 아홉, 육.
When classes resume in a few weeks, Dr. Park will teach the ins and outs of Korean menus and more of the customs of her home country. But the Guard doesn't expect to be Korean language experts by the time of their trip.
As soon as you get over there, we know that people speak so fast, and we're going to have to try and slow them down so that we can maybe understand a few words. We're going to pick up bits and pieces.
For Dr. Park, teaching this class is a way of saying thank you for all the American soldiers that fought for her country during the Korean War. She says the fact these Guardsmen are trying to learn the language will help them when they're in South Korea.
Once they go there and say a few Korean words to Korean people, I bet the Korean people will be so thrilled and so, appreciated to hear your own language from foreigner, especially from Western people, so that they will be eager to teach them more, to learn how to speak Korean well.
550 Guardsmen will be going to South Korea. From Pier, the headquarters and headquarters battery of the 147th Field Artillery Brigade and the 2nd Battalion of the 147th Field Artillery, which come from communities in primarily the northeastern part of South Dakota. Those units will be in South Korea for 3 weeks of training in March. I'm Dave Mossner reporting for 30. While working in Rock County, one of the last things I expected was to do a story on the U.S. Coast Guard. But they dropped by one afternoon for a courtesy call and public relations tour related to the war on drugs. It was like a neighbor dropping by to say hi. But instead of a cup of coffee, the Coast Guard came with its $1.5 million helicopter, an offering to help southern Wisconsin whenever needed.
We're trying to introduce ourselves to the other law enforcement agencies now, to let them know that we're available in Glenview, Illinois, and more than willing to come out and assist if we can.
The Guard can be on the scene quickly. The copter has a top speed of nearly 200 miles an hour.
This helicopter takes a little longer to get all the systems warmed up, but after about 5 minutes of flying, we've overtaken what our old helicopter could do as far as response time.
The Guard will help out with rescue missions, disasters, and provide added ammunition in the war on drugs.
In support of the local agencies, aerial surveillance, checking agricultural land for marijuana production.
Local authorities expect the Guard to make them more effective.
There's times when they would have come in real handy had we known that they were available, or had they had a machine at that time that could have responded.
With the Coast Guard just a phone call away, Black expects to use them and not worry about his budget. The Coast Guard will come to help at no charge. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3 at the Rock County Airport. Second graders at Harrison Elementary School started writing letters to soldiers after the start of Operation Desert Shield. Friendly letters from home for the men and women overseas. But it also brought the idea and concept of war home for the students. It started as a class project, writing to soldiers on duty in the desert.
I hope this will help you pass the time while you are in Saudi Arabia.
It's been a great learning experience for Dawn Aaron's second graders, but with possible shooting just days away, she's had second thoughts.
I've thought a great deal about that. It's a part of life, and we've had some tears in our room.
She says her class is very worried about what might happen, especially to their pen pals in the 82nd Airborne, soldiers who've become friends through the mail.
Well, my name is Anathy Sparks, but my friends call me Sparky.
What's been a fun project could turn tragic, a situation schools are struggling to prepare for. In a letter mailed to Janesville Elementary schools, teachers were urged to be honest, not to sugarcoat or shield students from the reality of war. But for students with family, friends, or pen pals in harm's way, dealing with that reality will be part of the teacher's job.
Try to keep the whole thing in perspective, to give the right perceptions to youngsters. And we have to do it in a way which reduces anxiety and which reduces fear.
I am a father of two. You and my daughter share the same name.
It is very hard for them. The tears I've let come out because I think they need to do that. But it is a part of life, and we'll deal with it when it happens. But right now, the biggest thing in our room is we're going to think positively, and we're going to think that they'll come home safely, and we're just going to keep hoping and praying for them.
They also plan to keep writing until their friends come home. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Janesville. While soldiers deployed and letters were written, there were also protests. The protest in Congressman Les Aspin's office became more than the usual story moments after it started. This video is sketchy in parts, but it represents one of our most precious freedoms. It started peacefully. 50 protesters from Beloit College condemning Congressman Les Aspin for his support of the war.
Les got us in this mess. Les got us in this mess.
The citizens opposed a war group planned to take over the congressional office. They didn't plan on Doug Barrett.
It's my statement. May I speak? You punks. You're all a bunch of punks.
We don't believe that we should be involved in the region.
What are you doing? You're making fools of yourself.
But look at the tone of voice that you've been using since you initiated this. What tone of voice have we been using? We've been doing this casually.
You've destroyed our property. Pardon me?
You've destroyed our property.
This is not your property. This isn't your property.
No. Those pieces.
Well, you can make some more with your finger paint.
Instead, Beloit College senior Danny Postal put up the sign again. That's when police told Barrett the protesters did have permission to post the signs. Barrett got ready to leave, but not without a parting shot.
I want to look at you all, because when my cousins are dying and when my friends are dying over there, I'm going to hold you people responsible.
I think what that guy represents, whoever he was precisely the instincts and the feelings that we're trying to peacefully oppose, the instincts of violence and aggression.
Postal tried to get Barrett to replace the damaged sign, but Barrett refused. A bit shaken by the confrontation here, 20 students sat down protesting the confrontation in the Gulf. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Janesville. If an army travels on its stomach, someone has to make the food. During Desert Shield, the Hormel plant in Beloit was busy with Operation Desert Feed. You've probably seen it on your grocer's shelves by now. Top Shelf, a ready-to-eat, microwavable product from Hormel. New technology in food production, and good news for the troops. The Beloit-made product's been on the retail market a year and a half, and now on its way to the Gulf.
Keep quite busy with our retail. Anything like this is certainly an advantage, and while it's not business that we look forward to, certainly we want to have the Hormel name over there taking care of our fighting men.
The troops don't get the attractive packaging wrapped around the chili con carne, but that's the only difference.
It is designed, of course, for microwave use, but it's also very easily submerged in water and heated for a few minutes, and then it can be easily opened and eaten right out of the container.
The line calls its production Desert Feed. Started in December, workers have made 5 million ready-to-eat meals. To keep up with demand, they added another shift here. We're calling 20 people from layoff. And they're not done. By April, another 5 million meals of chili con carne, stroganoff, pepper steak, and spaghettini has to be ready to go. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Beloit. When soldiers go off to war, life continues back home. Not long after his unit deployed, Jim Erkey's family grew by one. Like a lot of National Guardsmen, Jim Erkey hugged his wife and son goodbye before heading to Fort McCoy in January. February 6th, he left with the 32nd Military Police Company for Saudi Arabia. His pregnant wife, Peggy, gave birth last Friday to a 20-inch, 7-pound, 7-ounce girl, Kayla Sue Erkey, born the day her dad turned 25.
And he wanted to see the baby so bad. He hasn't seen her yet. So I thought, it'd be a nice birthday present. It's not the greatest time to be spending over there for your birthday, and thought it'd be nice. It was the only thing I really could give him.
A message to Jim has gone over to his unit through the Red Cross, but chances are you know about Kayla before he will.
He should be excited. I wish I could see his face when he gets the news.
For now, Jim Jr., JR, is the man of the house. The 2-year-old tells everybody his dad is riding camels in Saudi Arabia. The last Peggy heard, Jim is 60 miles from the Kuwaiti border guarding prisoners of war. Back home, pictures, videos, and party plans wait for his return.
And that's what's keeping him going. He can't wait to come home and see everybody. And we try to think positive. We can't wait for him to come home and see his new baby and the rest of his family.
Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Janesville. Philip Stansfield was a first lieutenant in the A Company of the Wisconsin National Guard 132nd Support Battalion. He was also a farmer. When a farm accident claimed his life, his friends and comrades rallied around his family to complete one more project together on the farm in Hollandale. Philip Stansfield was a farmer and soldier, a first lieutenant in A Company of the Wisconsin National Guard's 132nd Support Battalion. He died in a farm accident March 17th. Guard friends who attended the funeral wanted to do more.
And it was decided by a few of the senior NCOs that we should get some people together and perhaps help complete the project.
Philip's younger brother, Stephen, took over the farm after the accident, but didn't know how to finish the garage. Offers of support from the Guard and neighbors didn't stop.
I mentioned it to a couple people, and then all of a sudden it snowballed, and we had about 20 people said, yeah, let's do it. So we did it.
This is the last weekend before these Guard members go on annual training exercises.
We're like a family to these people, and we'll take time out for anybody that's part of our family and help them out.
Help that's been very reassuring during some bleak times.
It's learning to expect from the National Guard and our neighbors. When you're in trouble, they come and help.
The garage will stand as a frequent reminder of the loving legacy Philip left behind.
I'm sure he didn't even realize himself how many friends he had. If you have to go, it's nice to have left a lot of friends.
The friends plan to come back later to add some finishing touches. Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Hollandale. In 1990, a section of Interstate 90 was dedicated, which isn't noteworthy on its own, but given the times and the fact that 5 living recipients of the Medal of Honor took part, a roadside dedication deserved and received coverage on the evening news. The memorial honoring Wisconsin's war heroes brings back memories. Einer Engman remembers doing his job in Korea in 1951, leading his 9 remaining men up a hill toward the enemy.
And at the same time I raised up, and of course at that time he shot me in the head, and I shot him and killed him. And then I just proceeded right on to knock out another machine gun nest, and I headed for the second machine gun nest and wiped it out, and I collapsed at that time.
The Medal of Honor is a simple ribbon and star. For Hal Fritz, it's an honor for a job that needed doing.
And we ran into an ambush situation. The ambushers were set up for the truck convoy. It hit us and hit the vehicles and the command radios, and so I got a little tight there for about 35 minutes.
Most who win the Medal of Honor never see it because they died earning it. Burl Newman says he only came through World War II because he had an angel on each shoulder.
We went into this war to return God-given rights to our friends and allies, and I think that these were holy wars.
Standing here now, years after the gun stopped firing, these heroes say their award doesn't just belong to them.
I don't really personally feel that I did anything above and beyond the call of duty, but I guess for one day, I guess I was the best person, the best soldier I could be.
I feel lucky that I'm alive to have the privilege to wear this little ribbon around my neck. I consider myself a survivor, not necessarily a hero. And when I put it on, I wear it for all of us, and I wear it for the guys that aren't here.
Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Rock County.
The final story here completes the circle of military life that begins with deployment. In 1990, a veteran of the Civil War who died in 1907 was given full military honors and received a new headstone, because while he had been buried years before, even his family didn't know where to find him until that Memorial Day.
And glory guards with solemn round the bivouac of the dead.
Elevated firing, aim, fire.
William Kent, a corporal in Berdayan sharpshooters, died in 1907. His wife, Elizabeth, was buried here next to him in 1917.
Fire. Load.
The descendants of William and Elizabeth Kent last year asked former Marine and history buff Richard Roberts to look for the two ancestors who vanished without a trace.
I started to do research on this particular soldier, and after about 2 months, I located him in Oak Hill Cemetery in an unmarked grave.
His truth is marching on.
Civil War veterans started Memorial Day, then called Remembrance Day, a day to remember veterans of all wars.
A day when a loyal people, grateful for service rendered their country, unite to honor their patriot dead.
Heritage, lest we forget. The line I like to use is, we will remember, but we must remember. We must remember. It's very important that we do.
Dave Mossner, WISC News 3, Janesville.
That concludes this edition of Vintage Video Military Honors. Thanks for watching. I'm David Mossner. See you next time.